Live. So it has been a very changeable week.
Yeah, no kidding. Fucking rip off.
It's not my fucking fault, man.
Yeah.
It's not my fault, and I'll explain exactly how it's not my fault. Um, this started off. This was going to be the final week. Well, it still is the final week for broadcast from this show, An American Werewolf in New Jersey, episode 77, for the calendar year of 2021. And we were going to complete today part 2 of the top 10 fantasy lists, 5 through 1.
Mm-hmm.
And then tomorrow we were going to go online and complete with our Christmas movie, which at the time was a movie called I Trapped the Devil, which I'm still very much looking forward to catching on to when we kick it in January. Mm-hmm. But then last month, this was something we had mapped out well in advance. And then suddenly, Eric and Marty and I did Starship Troopers in November. And this idea that we should do a Verhoeven movie every month popped up because Marty's over in Dublin, so we don't get a chance to connect very often. But right. A once-a-month thing we could kind of do with the time difference, even though by the time we start here at 8 p.m. Eastern time, it's like 1 a.m. his time, but he's willing to do it once a month. So we're like, okay, we appreciate that. And he's like, well, let's do it once a month. Okay. So we get to it, and we're like, we got to do this more often. And so suddenly I Trapped the Devil gets kicked to January, and we decide to do RoboCop for the Thursday. So top 10 list, RoboCop. Then we find out, and it's an unofficial policy of this podcast, that no one actually spend money. I don't want people spending money to just sit around here and bullshit and talk movies. If you have access with a physical copy or you can access it on a streaming service, then, that's what we kind of build our catalog around, so to speak. And so RoboCop wasn't streaming anywhere. So we decided to pick another Verhoeven movie, Total Recall, which we're going to cover tomorrow. That brings us back to today. And the top 10 list, Ryan buzzes me on Sunday saying he's starting to come down with something, and we all know what that means, possibly. He's like, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to make it on Wednesday. Let me let you know. So I said, well, if you're letting me know on Sunday that you're feeling down, then I got to read the lay of the land on this and start to make an adjustment. And now we can kick top 10 to January as well. So that left a big gap in our schedule for today. And then John came up with the idea of a Christmas movie, possibly A Christmas Carol, or all the Christmas carols that we wanted to do. And we could just sort of go at it that way. And I came up with, okay, either we could do A Christmas Carol, I figured that we have access to on Tubi with George C. Scott. I kind of narrowed it down a little bit because I wanted to keep us on a somewhat similar path or page. Or we could do Bad Santa. And I love Bad Santa. I love me some Bad Santa. But yes, I think A Christmas Carol is far more appropriate for a Christmas movie. So here we are covering 1984's A Christmas Carol. I am the American Werewolf. Chris Kringle is in the house, and for some reason he's ready to mingle and talk about Dickens. And then we've got Tiny Bill, who's decided, he was able to put his crutch down and put it in the corner there and join us to talk some George C. Scott tonight. So I'm glad we've been able to do this. So welcome all to the show. But before we get it going, I want to mention something. Last week, we were in the middle of The Witch, and suddenly I get this stream of comments, starting with this kid, Mario, who's one of my students, which turns into this long diatribe of comments. And somehow, before you know it, there are just all these students of mine from my grade 8 class that are in the stream. And I appreciated it, but then for some reason it sort of caught fire. And before you know it, by the end of the episode, I think I had jumped 10 subs and it carried me over to 100 subs. So there was, this congratulations, and I was a little freaked out about it because I'm live, and I don't know exactly how to react, and but I was happy about it, and I was like, well, thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it. And then it's not exactly like I can have detailed conversations, like I could have an hour's conversation here talking about a movie. I can't do that in English class. I got to talk English. Even if it's not to everybody's interests. So Monday comes, we talked about it a little bit on Friday, but then Monday comes around, and my students come into the room, and they're like, get in here. I'm like, well, what is it now? Because I run one of those kinds of classrooms, where I figure one of the kids is going to show me the newest headlock, that they've decided to put another kid in. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they all turned around and presented me with this. And if you can see that, it's a hand-carved plaque, or it's a very heavy wooden plaque that presents an American Werewolf in New Jersey, a congratulatory thing for passing 100 subscribers with the YouTube insignia. And to be perfectly honest, congratulate yourselves. Thank you. Because you guys have been Bill, you were my second guest. I think you were my first guest on the podcast by the second episode. And John, you've been here pretty much from the beginning too. I honestly didn't know what to say. I just smiled, and I'm rarely at a loss for words, but I actually was there. And I was extremely touched that they would take the time to actually construct something like this for me. Mm-hmm. I really appreciate it. And I just want to say thanks to all of you guys, whoever's in the stream right now. Thank you so much. It means the world to me.
God forbid they finish their homework, but they got time to make a carving.
Yeah, of course. They can't pay attention in class, but one kind of balances out the other, I suppose.
It's a wonderful present to you, Mike. It's a wonderful gift for your achievement. Yeah. And if you keep it in your room, and one of them acts up, it's great to whack them on the ass.
No, I'm not whacking anybody. I have 4 days left while this whole thing comes to a close. But what I want to say is, in the time that remains, unfortunately, I still have to do the job. So we gotta work on some English while we're here. It doesn't mean that I don't care. I care a great deal. I couldn't be more grateful for all of my students. And so, thanks so much for that. I truly appreciate all of you.
And before
I want you to know that.
Before you let it get away, on behalf of myself, I won't speak. You deserved it. It's about time you got an award for this too. So on behalf of myself, and I'm assuming everybody else, except for Bill, since he's here to say for himself, to all your students, thank you. I'm glad somebody acknowledged Mike.
It's been a great year for this show. All right, let's move on. Let's get to it. Are we ready?
I am.
On Dasher.
Scary, spooky.
Yeah, it's not exactly Christmassy, but that's what you get. Mario's here real quick. He wants me to show the play button, which I did for the show, and then all the way from India, I've got my good friend Smila, who's coming from about 10 or 12 hours away, saying hi. So, hey, Smila. It's great to hear from you. Thank you so much for stopping by on the show. You're about 8,000 miles away.
What time is it there?
I can't even think of it right now. It's got to be 8 or 9 hours difference, probably about 5 in the morning, something like that, maybe around 6. Eric is in the house and he says, good evening, Grinches. Mario says hi. And Eric says, very cool that made that gift. So congratulations again. And I appreciate it. Now, I was just thinking that it must be such a privilege to be part of these productions. To play this is probably one of the most beloved roles in all of English literature. To play Dickens' character Ebenezer Scrooge, to play Bob Cratchit, to play Tiny Tim, Christmas Past, Christmas Present, all these different, his cousin, his nephew, Fred, all these different people. It's fantastic to play. When we see these types of productions that are released on the mainstream by the big studios, they're always ensembles. And this is no exception. You've got George C. Scott in the title role. And John and I covered George C. Scott and just couldn't say enough nice things about him, about what a fantastic actor he is from The Changeling in 4 years prior to this in 1980, which unfortunately just kind of got overrun because it came out the same year as The Shining. And then 1980s, the original Friday the 13th. So it just kind of got overrun by the timing of things. But I want to start out the show this way with a kind of question, and it's we can do a round robin thing, and I'm genuinely curious about this as it applies to each of you. Who is Ebenezer Scrooge? It's an interesting. I had never watched this movie with the idea of having to review it before, but he's kind of like when I would first watch it, and you would see the Christmas Eve sort of day play out, as 5 o'clock rolled around, and then that evening, and then his limited interactions with Cratchit, and then his nephew, and then the people at the exchange, that are asking for provision for the poor, and all. It almost has like a sort of comic sense to it, But then you look at it, and you're just. There's more to it than that. At least I thought so. There's a lot more to it than that. This is a television adaptation, but, so, you can kind of take it for granted, but it's George C. Scott, and you've just got so many fantastic people. Who is this guy?
I'll tell you what, I've had to reconsider my entire view of Scrooge after watching this production. I have to admit, I've never sat down and watched it because there are so many really bad adaptations that I got numb to it and I don't pay attention to them. I'd rather go see the Blackadder version and laugh instead of sitting through yet another terrible one. I mean, this is the template for me. This is where I got the whole story from. So Albert Finney sort of is like the template that I judge all the other versions off of. But this one, George C. Scott played it so incredibly different than I would have expected, and he played it. His choices were so good that it put the character in a whole other light. And I started thinking about it in terms of therapy and emotion. And this is what he did. Most of the adaptations that I see, Scrooge is played off like he's crotchety, he's yelling, he's mean, he's got a cane, he's chasing people, he's going to hit them. He's like, get away from me. That's not what George C. Scott does here. George C. Scott plays it off where he has humor. He's laughing to himself. He's pushing people away, but he's laughing off the entire idea of Christmas. in the way that I tend to see internet atheists do the same thing, where they're laughing and they're condescending and with your silly man in the sky. He's doing that with Christmas. He's like, oh, go away from me. He's laughing to himself, smirking. And then the symbolism of when he goes home, which you were talking about. He goes home, is this huge house, opulent house that's completely dark and completely cold, and he doesn't spend any time in any of it. He hides himself away in his bedroom, right?
Yeah.
And not only is he in the bedroom, but he locks himself in the bedroom. Not only does he lock himself in the bedroom, he's got 5, 6, 7 locks on that door. And that's just the whole symbolism of it never hit me as hard as it hit me with George C. Scott, was the symbolism of him being closed off and retreating within himself and keeping the entire world out and living in this small, closed, emotional space.
Yeah. Chris, do you want to get in on that?
When you talk about, to me, and I think this is what the brilliance of George C. Scott's performance of it is, and it goes to what Tiny was saying about how people, Scrooge screaming and yelling. There was also everybody else playing it, for lack of a better term, over the top, or playing a caricature of what these people were.
Right.
Scrooge is us. George C. Scott played him like a man.
Right.
Not a character, an actual person.
Yes.
And if you listen to what he says, it makes you examine the fact, at least I got it, the only time I ever got it was when I read the book, is the opposing sides to Christmas. You got to remember in 1843, when the book was written, Christmas was only a Christian holiday. It wasn't as commercialized as it is. And I think that's where we got a little bit of the bad interpretations of it, because we tried to commercialize it.
Yeah, like it or not, it is commercialized.
George C. I mean, Ghost of Christmas Present, who we'll get to, gets played a lot of times like Santa Claus. But George C. Scott played it like a man.
Right.
I mean, the first time he says "bah humbug," it wasn't like "bah." He just looked at him and started laughing. What, are you an idiot?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's that dismissal of it.
Yes.
That we ourselves, no matter what generation or even what age, at one point in time will get. We're tired of it.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But that's the way and I thought it was very risky that he did that.
Right.
Like your definition of, you asked, who is Scrooge? When this movie came out, or when this show came on television, I'm sorry, CBS Sunday Morning, who was the network that did it, had Charles Kuralt, I'm really reaching, talk about it. And there were English experts that were talking about what would Scrooge be in the line. And one guy said, if the Christmas season was going to be something, it's a big show. There's the lights, there's the singing, there's the songs, there's this. And he goes, and all of a sudden, in the middle of Act 2, everything will get stripped away. The lights will go dark, and a spotlight will go on a guy at one side of the stage, and it will be Scrooge. And he just walks across the stage in the dark in that spotlight. And when he goes to get off the other end, he's happy. Because that's basically really what it is. It describes the dark room. And decide, he always got that because we know people that are like that. They get so pressured down. And George C. Scott wasn't afraid of showing that. Everybody else at the time's kind of making jokey. I love the Albert Finney one. I love that musical.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Because he can come off in a comic sort of way, and I started to see it that way too. And you're like, this guy's just such a dick. He's just an asshole to just everybody.
Right.
And he's got the great David Warner. And I love David Warner. Anytime you see David Warner, I know I'm going to get a fantastic performance. The only good thing about the Omen, playing Bob Cratchit, and he just rips into Cratchit for like wanting to put a lump of coal in the fire. Like it's so cold in there, he's using like a candle, to like keep himself warm. And you're like, what the hell is wrong with this guy? you know. And then his nephew Fred comes over, and he's like, "Merry Christmas." And when you really start to examine what it is that Scrooge is saying, it occurred to me like how unhappy he must be.
Exactly.
Because he's like, any idiot, who's talking about Merry Christmas ought to be boiled in his own pudding, and like have a stake of holly through his heart. And you're thinking about it, and I'm like, holy that's like a really harsh thing to say.
Right.
Let alone to your nephew, your only dead sister's living, heir, on Christmas Eve. Uncle, I'd like you to come, join me and my wife for Christmas dinner.
Right.
I'd rather see you in hell first. And you're like, wow, this guy is just really, this guy is really traumatized.
Yes.
This guy, like happy people don't say that.
His childhood traumas.
Yeah.
The whole therapy thing it plays out.
Yeah. And so by the time you get to,
sometimes it's not shown.
Yeah, by the time you get to that part in the exchange where people are asking for provision for the poor, and he's like, are there no workhouses? Are there no prisons? But I mean, it's just, you put it all together and you realize there's more than this guy just being a dick.
Right.
Like this guy is just like, something is off here. And like it's like he's lost his humanity or something. And like, and I think at one point,
Uh-oh. You there, Mike?
He's deep in thought.
Hey, are you there?
There you go. All right, we found you. You froze on us for a second.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, the signal or something like that.
I figured it was a Ghost of Christmas Past saying, what are you talking about, dude?
Yeah, they don't like what I'm saying here. But, Fred who says, Christmas is the time to open your shut up hearts. To your fellow creatures, and you just realize that this man is just like encased himself in ice.
Can I jump to that for a second, Mike? Because I wanted to bring it back to that moment, the moment between Fred and Ebenezer, when Scrooge says, what is the time of year except picking a man's pocket every 25th of December for no work, and then Fred counters it, saying it's more than that. That little scene right there encompasses the holiday.
Yes.
Really. For even back then and now. Because remember what Scrooge says, he doesn't yell at him.
No.
He says, you're a powerful speaker, perhaps you should go to Parliament.
Yes.
Like it was getting to him, so he pushed it off. And Scrooge, and again, this goes to George C. Scott to play it that way. But he could have gotten mean.
But it was very correct in the sense that it's a much more human portrayal.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's an extremely human portrayal. You're absolutely right. He goes to that big empty house.
Yep.
There are no lights. There's no one in the house.
Yep.
The house is completely dark. It's cold. There's no servant. There's no nothing. He has like this little coal fire going with like this little bit of like soup or whatever it is, but it's sad.
Yes.
You get the distinct impression of how sad all of this is. And that's
sadder still if you're a reader, if you're someone who dives into books, the line when he's watching himself as a child and he's sort of justifying his old wound, saying, well, I had my friends, all my books, he goes on about Alibaba. That makes it even sadder, is that you can't even console yourself in books and things he enjoys anymore. He's not reading when he's in his his room.
Yeah, he's lost essentially everything.
And you said he's encased in ice. You're bringing up Dante because that's how the devil is portrayed in the Divine Comedy. He's not in hell, and in hellfire he's frozen in a block of ice.
Yeah.
It's a hell of a thing. Hold on a second. We got a couple of comments. Let's see. Dan is here from Mr. Dan. What's up, man? Thanks for stopping into the stream tonight, man. We appreciate it. Eric is saying he absolutely loves George C. Oh, he hasn't seen it, so he'll have to see this. Yeah, this is currently broadcasting on Tubi and on Hulu. So you can find it.
Dr. Strangelove after that. You haven't seen that movie.
That'll contrast for
you want to see the big board.
Yeah.
So he's
fighting in the war room.
He's going to, he gets his visit from Marley, and Marley is Frank Finley in this, and is just extremely scary.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is a very scary Marley, and for some reason, when I saw those chains, all I could think of was that they must just be so painful. Digging into him, even though he's a spirit, they seem to just be digging into his flesh. Because that was, I think, the punishment for being in chains. In medieval times, they would just kind of dig into your skin, and you'd be abrased and bleeding all over the place, having to carry these chains everywhere.
That's right.
And that he is the representation of where Scrooge was 7 years ago.
Right.
All the awful things that Scrooge has done. Because Scrooge isn't, like, I keep coming back to this. I don't consider Scrooge to be an evil man.
That's the thing. I don't think he is either. I think he has become, like we said, he's closed off from the world. He doesn't view the world in any fashion, except business, money, what's important.
Yeah, what he does.
And that's why when Marley says, mankind should have been my business. Yeah, Scrooge said you're a good man of business, and that's not a sin.
Right.
What he's saying, it had to be more than that.
Yeah.
Right.
Charity, mercy, forbearance. They were all my business.
And he says my business should have been a drop in the ocean of everything else. And that is powerful.
But that's where it sheds to Scrooge.
From such a long time ago, he's just lost complete contact with all of these things.
Yeah.
Right.
There's nothing but going to work, and you get that distinct impression. I don't think I'm far off. Is that there's nothing but the office, the exchange, and then home.
Yeah, and that's become his reality. That's become his whole standard for being is being good at making money, and to the detriment of everything.
Right. And in the book and in this movie and in good versions of this one, all what we're saying gets brought up when he views his past as well.
Yeah, and it's even to the detriment of himself that he can't even enjoy his own money.
Right.
Like, he doesn't even spend it on it. It's not like he's living like DiCaprio out there somewhere, and, he's just, kicking it in the Bahamas all the time and, this sort of thing. He's just, he's just so unhappy.
And that's the thing with closed off people, is that others don't really hate them. They just feel sorry for them because they see the pain. They see the pain that they're going through, and they're either not equipped to or can't be bothered to try and help them. Right. So you feel bad for them because there's nothing you do. And Fred's a perfect example. He's just like, I'll keep trying. I don't know what's wrong with my uncle, but, I'm not going to give up on him. But, he just tells me to stick it up my ass every year.
My mother spoke of him fondly.
Yeah. Dan says Frank Finley is very good in this. Yeah, very creepy. And yes, he is.
Dude, that's one thing that gets lost in a lot of interpretations, is that this thing is a ghost story, and Marley is supposed to scare the pants off you. And when it was written in 1843, we weren't desensitized to things like zombies and ghosts. And this is a very scary concept.
Yeah,
and it's driven home in the George C. Scott version with all the time you see the Victorian era funeral wagon. That thing is scary as hell. When you see that wagon go past with the coffin in the glass enclosure, that symbol is just so damn scary. And it must have been scary for people back in the 1800s because death was really something.
It's one of those things that, he receives his forewarning, but Marley is so scary because he just seems unstable. Like the other spirits, Christmas past, Christmas present. I mean, we get to the end and, then it's 3 a.m. and, we see what happens there. But Marley looks like he's just ready to pounce. And he's screaming and he's yelling and, he's like, there's more gravy than grave, and he just starts shrieking.
It's desperation, man.
You realize when Scrooge said there's more gravy than grave in you, Scrooge was dismissing him like he normally did, and Marley from his world or that world of business said, a modern day version, will you shut up? I'm trying to talk to you. Mm-hmm. That's why when he screamed and Scrooge cowered, the first thing he said, man of the world, do you believe in me or not? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's what he throws in his face. Because Scrooge was bluster, put it away type deal.
Luckily, it scares him enough that he starts to listen. He had that short, sharp shot.
Marley, in this portrayal too, Marley is in pain.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they don't show that. They show Marley and most of the times coming in and, chattering. He's in pain because he can't help.
Right.
This is why he's desperate to help Scrooge. Because he can't help anybody else.
He can't help himself.
Yeah. So he's trying
He can't help himself. He's past the point of redemption. This is his story for eternity now.
Right. And he's saying, you have a chance. Which is the golden line in the book. And
this
you
is
have
exactly
a chance to escape my fate.
This is exactly accurate when it says that this is a shock treatment.
Right.
Mm-hmm. You have to jolt him out of his apathy, and his hard-heartedness to get him to, listen, and to be open to this. You have to scare him into it. So we get to Christmas Past, who comes in and is the light of truth.
Right.
And that's where we start to dig into his story, which is tragic and painful. You find out that his mother has died giving birth to him, and his father just bears him an unforgivable grudge.
Yep.
And has just kept him at arm's length, or perhaps even worse, for the entirety of his life. His recollection and his filtering in his mind of Christmas has to do with abandonment and loneliness and rejection and isolation. And the only friends, you're absolutely right, he has are his books, because he's sent away to boarding school. And when all the children come home for Christmas, he's not welcome in his own home.
Right.
And he has to sit there and just sort of make do by himself. I remember once about 10 years ago when I first went overseas, my first Christmas was by myself. It was kind of miserable.
Yeah.
Plus, I was in a Muslim country where they didn't even pay any attention to Christmas. So it was just Saturday, and you're just like, wow, this kind of sucks, but that's this is 100 times worse than that. And he's a small boy and he just looks so damn sad.
Yep.
And when Scrooge tries to justify it, he says he's not alone. He has his friends. He has his books.
Right.
He's looking back on that from, a couple of scabs have healed over the wound, so to speak. Yeah. That's why I love this scene, because she said, really, she challenges every image that he sees and presents, or the Ghost of Christmas Past should. I mean.
Yeah, hold on. We got a quick comment here from Iron Wolf 21X. He says hi, so thanks for stopping in the show.
Hello,
yeah,
Iron
it's a sad story. His father, played by Nigel Davenport, you can just see how mean. You can just see he's just mean and cold and distant. So in a way that a father is his son's first exposure to, what it is to be a man. This is his This is his role model,
right?
During his most formative years, and then at one point, his sister, who seems to be the only beacon of love in his life at that time, his sister Fan, played by Joanne Whalley, comes one day to tell him as a young man that he's been invited back home by his father. Father's so much kinder than he was. He wants you to come home. And so he runs out to the wagon, and there's his father saying, yeah, you're staying for 3 days. I think 3 days is more than enough for us to see each other. And, just sort of closes the door right in his son's face.
Right.
Because his son, Scrooge, just for a moment, dares to hope.
Right.
He dares to hope that, my father loves me. He dares to hope that, my family, is not rejecting me. And it's just long enough for him to open his heart just a little bit to have his father just immediately step on it once again.
Yep.
So you can see where the pathology, sort of lies here and why he has become this way.
Right.
It's not a blameless sort of thing. And, in the sense that he's still responsible for his own actions in the way that perhaps Marley had a sad story like that. Because, there are lots of people who have these sorts of sad stories, but don't necessarily turn out this way.
Yeah, and it's sadder that he had opportunities along the way. He had some mentors that could have straightened him out, like Fezziwig.
Well, Mike, when you turn around and say when he yells at his nephew when he treats the men at the market, and what a dick, you begin to understand where it comes from.
Yeah,
this is one of the things that makes Scrooge, for lack of a better term, endearing, because you see this, and even though you pity him, so suddenly you stop blaming him. You're like, oh my God, Jesus, how the hell was he gonna? How would I survive if I was, in this situation?
Yeah, but the genius of Dickens is he's daring you to see yourself in whatever past sins or.
Here's the worst guy in the world, and I'll make you like him by the end of the book.
You humanize him. You humanize him. And you humanize the person typically by, and this is sort of the story of the anti-hero. You make an anti-hero by taking a person who's not necessarily the best person, but you put him against somebody who's worse.
Right. Absolutely.
And so Scrooge is not, he's not all the way at, full Ebenezer Scrooge yet, but you can see how he's kind of gotten there. But Bill is right in the sense also that he has had some opportunities for, changing his course, but he just can't do it. And he's had an opportunity for love, with the Bell storyline. But he's starting to become his father.
Right.
You get the impression that he's starting to, form into that guy. And Bell ultimately rejects him. And his, proposition for marriage or their engagement. And the funny and the sad thing is that it's not a rejection that is absolute. It's almost like a test. I'm going to leave to see if you're going to come after me a little bit, but he's already so emotionally frozen that he can't bring himself to do it. And that reminds me, and to get into another production, and I guess we can do this a little bit. Why not? What the hell?
Why not?
Show. This reminds me of the Patrick Stewart interpretation where he's practically weeping. Looking at this recollection and yelling at his younger self to please go after her. Stop yourself now. Please don't, don't, why are you standing there like a dumbass?
Right.
Because he realizes what he's starting to see, with the light of truth, what his life has actually become. And, he's being taken along this path to see every place that he went wrong.
Right.
Yeah. And at the end of that trip, he actually does. He's already making that turn. You can see that he's already seeing, hey, I screwed up here. What do I do about it? And that leads you into the next spirit, which is your opportunity that one time of the year when you can be redeemed over and over.
There's the great line, it's in the book, and they mention it or paraphrase it in this version where she says to him, these are just shadows of things that have been.
Right.
That they are what they are, do not blame me. It's not my fault. It's yours. It's, a very nice way of laying that out. You could have made these choices. You could have chased after her.
Yeah, ultimately, he has to take responsibility.
Yeah.
Ultimately,
and he's just ignored it and said, well, that's why I love they added the scene where you saw what happened to Belle.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and she sees
it. Ignore that. And that's in the book.
Yeah.
And I love that they did that. And I liked George C. Scott's reaction to it.
Yeah, and she sees, and she's happy. She's happy with like 5 children. And then what really drives him over the edge is that she pities him.
Right.
And he sees the pity. And that's what he can't look at it anymore.
He can't,
and he takes that cone, like Christmas Past is saying to him, it's like you've been going through your whole life with your eyes closed.
Yeah.
And he just takes the cone and he has to drown the light out because he just can't bear, to see anymore, as to, what this has become, because it's, and maybe, anybody, and that is relatable. I mean, if someone would take you back over the course of your life and show you every mistake or every major mistake, you probably wouldn't want to, spend too much time glaring at it either. So it's a hell of a thing. Then we suddenly get to Edward Woodward. Edward Woodward, the great Edward Woodward is here. God. And we talked about him, John and I, when we got to The Wicker Man. And it is just fantastic stuff. Coming from Edward Woodward, who is actually quite a severe spirit.
Yes. Well, I'm going to say it's a unpopular opinion. You can see where all the budget went in this part, because I think George C. Scott got a lot of it, because I felt like this whole scene could have been done bigger and more joyfully. I didn't get the joy and the bigness that I should have come with it. And even the performance is a little bit understated with this. For me, and that's just me, when I see productions of this, the bigger the Spirit of Christmas Present is, the better it is. Just unwieldily big and joyous is the way it should be played. And it sort of got played almost like it was Ghost of Christmas Past 2, where he's like, giving him the business a little bit too much. Instead of
I actually liked him giving him the business, because in the present's the only place you can change.
Right.
You can't change in the past. The future's not made yet, which we'll discuss. That's why he was kind of saying,
right. I see what you're saying, and it makes sense, and it's a good part. I'm just saying, for me, that already happened with the Ghost of Christmas Past, where he's starting to make that change. Now you need to present the opportunity, like 1,800 or so of my brothers. There's this big opportunity for you. It's huge. You don't have to make it part 2 feel bad about yourself. You should be, hey, I'm giving you an invitation. Join the party.
But going on to that discussion, and I'll give it back to you in a sec, Mike, but going on to that discussion, if you see the way Scrooge reacts in this, I think he's realizing that there is a chance, because he even says to the Spirit, I didn't know Bob Cratchit lived here. I didn't know this. He's starting to change. The Spirit doesn't have to start to change. It's kind of just like, if it was a modern day thing, it would be like, you idiot, wake up, to Scrooge. But that's what I think is what makes it, you can't do that with the jolly old elf I'm impersonating right now. That sense of you want to shake them.
The key to that, though, is him seeing everyone else and how they're caught up in the spirit of the bigness of Christmas, and they're all saying good things about him. Cratchit is a fine fellow, but his wife wants to talk some shit, and he stops her, and she even relents and will cheers.
It shows her good nature.
It's a begrudging across the board. It seems to be a begrudging kind of praise. Whether it's from Fred, or whether it's from Cratchit, it's all sort of in spite of the fact, that he's this crotchety old, kind of guy. But I mean, again, you see the opportunity of what it really means to celebrate Christmas. You see it in the Cratchit home, that despite all of these many sorts of, pitfalls that they sort of endure, money and, financial problems and the health of his son and, all these different things, that they just kind of keep going on with everything. You see it, with Fred, where they sort of discuss, Ebenezer and, what he's actually, it's just, he harms no one but himself. these sorts of things. It's just like a realistic window into, what people actually think of him.
Right.
These kinds of things.
Tight ass.
Well, yeah, I mean, a little bit more than that, but, just.
Oh, no, I mean, I'm only using that as, I mean, when the kids go to say they give the toast to him, you can tell they didn't want to do it. That was like the downside of the holiday. I love the fact when Tiny Tim says amen and Scrooge goes amen, and it goes to President goes, what? What'd you say? what did you say? I didn't quite hear that. No, nothing. Because you're starting to see not the change, but he's becoming aware.
Yeah.
You see that when he sees Tim. By seeing how people talk about him now, as opposed to how he is feeling, especially when he sees Tim going, will he die? That's a genuine, heartfelt, he was concerned.
Yeah.
Which you did not see,
Because he's been going through life with his eyes closed. He's been completely unaware as to the situations of others. Oh, yeah.
And he's warming up to it on his own.
And it's not even that
he has a surprise reveal.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's not even that he only sees himself. I don't even think he sees himself.
Not yet.
It's like he's functioning on some kind of autopilot or something along those lines.
I think he was genuinely surprised when he saw how people saw him.
Yeah, and when the one line that I love is when Edward Woodward says, "It may be that in the sight of heaven you're more worthless and less fit to live than millions, like this poor man's child."
Right.
Dickens can write a phrase, baby.
Yeah, I mean that's quite a turn.
Boom.
And just kind of puts him in his place. Now, Woodward is a little snarky throughout, but I mean, I didn't mean that, he's just kind of battering him, but I mean, it is a continuation of where Christmas Past left off.
Yeah.
Right.
Except you're seeing, one, how he was kind of formed, what life is like today, or at least how other people perceive him. And then we get to the exposure of, what really happens in terms of the workhouses and the prison, and we have the children. Yeah, we have the children, ignorance and want.
Yeah.
Which in the book.
No matter how big and boisterous Christmas is, that's still an undercurrent. It's still there.
Yeah. Yeah. And you get to see those people that are living outside, that family that's living outside. And barely able to provide, and that father is just angry and he's snapping at his children, and it isn't because he doesn't love them, it's just he's so frustrated that he's unable to provide on Christmas Eve, and that the situation calls for them to be living in the streets.
That was such an anti-Thatcher thing to put in too.
Yeah,
considering this came out in '84, that was like, that just made me cringe and go, yeah, that's directed right at Thatcher. I want to work, but I can't.
Go ahead.
No, go.
No, in the book, and I love that because that guy who was talking about it represented other people that they saw that night. If when you read the book, they fly in the sky, they go and see sailors, they go, and he represented everybody that was there, and it was also a representation of something Dickens couldn't stand. He couldn't understand why there was poverty in the streets at that time. And he grew up in poverty at one point in time. So this is where kind of that look came from. We see it all the time. I mean, I was explaining, that Band-Aid song, Do They Know It's Christmas?
Oh, yeah.
Somebody didn't understand it. I said, well, back in 1984,
there's a famine.
There was a famine, there was this. And the guy goes, yeah, but there's a famine here. And I said, and that's why the song's so popular.
Yeah.
We kind of figured that out in our head. Yeah. This is where it goes, what you said from the very beginning, the Spirit took them to church or the market, and then he took them to, and Scrooge isn't getting it. I think that's also why he kind of gets snarky with him. Dude, it's right in front of your face.
Yeah.
And then he gets here and then shows those children.
Yeah.
Which is brilliantly done. And bang.
Yeah.
And nobody ever portrays the children in the movie.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've ever seen it, and I love that look of how they do it.
Hold on. We've got some. Okay, I'm gonna have to address some of this goofiness in the comments tomorrow. Okay, I'll get to that later. Oh, damn kids. Okay.
You guys screwed up.
Yeah. Get ready to work tomorrow. So okay. So we've got some
written on Michael's brow is doom.
Yeah, pretty much. No, it's just.
I know.
Nothing out of
Absolutely. Come on, the kids.
So I mean, we come to 3 a.m. We come to 3 a.m.
I must be the old man.
Yeah, this one was well done. Very scary.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. This idea that he is not a friendly apparition, with this shrieking sort of thing. I mean, the silence that you get in a lot of other interpretations is gone here, and instead you get this sort of banshee-like shriek. And it clearly is, every time he asks a question, you just get a shriek for a response. And he's forlorn at this point because, when Christmas Present leaves him, he says to himself, what have I done to be abandoned like this? He's starting to realize that, he's isolated himself so badly in this kind of thing that he's alone. He realizes, I think, for the first time how alone he really is. And then when he's feeling alone, the final specter descends on him. And it doesn't really it paints a horrible picture, actually, of takes him to the exchange. Where clearly he's dead and no one cares.
Yep, it is brutal.
They're like, I'll go to his funeral if someone feeds me. If there's lunch, I'll go. Yeah. If not, I can't be expected to, just waste my time like this without being fed. We find out that people have robbed him on his deathbed. Stolen the blankets from him off of his bed that he was lying in as he was dying. Stole the curtains from around his bed frame. His silverware, and are just cackling,
about it.
And they really are these sort of lower level, almost like demon, in that, and it's awful to watch.
I'll bring up the Albert Finney production again, and you don't expect it because there's the dancing and it's the big number. Thank you very much. I watched that the other day, and it just is, it's reinforced. I always knew this, but always reinforced. They're dancing on his coffin.
Yeah, dancing on his grave.
It's so brutal. It is just, there's no better illustration of how unloved he was than
and what even made it better was that he was completely oblivious.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's how, right? Hell is you were there and you don't know it.
Yeah. Like in that scene where the body's lying in the bed and it's Scrooge.
Yeah.
And it's the only thing they skipped from the book, and I'm like, oh, that would have been really cool. You heard rats gnawing to get in to the body.
Right.
And then you see the people who took his stuff, and that's the rats, who got his stuff.
Yeah.
I love the way this tied it in. And even with George C. Scott, when he was afraid at that moment or couldn't understand, he didn't overly play it.
Yeah, but he still was
just like, but you saw, because he's terrified now of what's coming.
But he's still, the brain is working, the logic is working, where he's in denial and he's trying every avenue to try and not realize that it's him. Until
that's why I love when they said, "Is show me some compassion with the death."
Yeah,
and
now, there are a couple of other interpretations where they show a family that's rescued by his death because the debt that is owed to him is put off for a couple of weeks in time for this young couple to actually survive, and they're going to be okay. As opposed, I don't know if they were looking at debtor's prison or some sort of court charge or whatever. We learned that of the death of Tiny Tim, which is just heartbreaking in this interpretation, and Warner just plays it perfectly, as does Mrs. Cratchit.
Yeah, and that robbed Christmas of its joy.
What she was selling? Did you realize what she was selling in the living room? The burial shroud. It was white and everything else. It was the burial shroud.
Ooh, don't like that.
If you think that's what she, and goes, the color hurts my eyes. I can't show weak eyes. When Cratchit comes in.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, he goes, you will all visit there on Sunday because that's, that's when the funeral is. Right? One of the things that somebody says you don't realize too when you read it in the book, and they really portrayed it well in the movie, especially with the people from the market. It's only like a year later. It's not even like years later. It's like next Christmas, he's dead. Tim's dead.
Yeah, it's right. It's right on the verge.
Yeah,
he's right on the verge, and that's kind of what I wanted to wanted to ask. What it is that makes his death so horrible?
He's what for Tim?
No, I mean for Scrooge.
Oh.
I mean, is it that he just realizes all of his mistakes and he's going? I don't think it's necessarily the
closest to him. It's the easiest thing that he could take care of and deal with, and he isn't doing it. It's the thing that's right in his face every single fucking day, where he never even bothers to ask Bob Cratchit about his son.
Yeah, you wasted your time.
Yeah,
actually, that's what I liked in the very beginning when they had. Where Tiny Tim tells Scrooge, I'm Tim Cratchit. I'm waiting for my father. You're gonna have
he's like, don't beg on this corner. He's like, I'm not begging. He's like, I'm Tim Cratchit. And he's like, humbug.
You're going to have a long wait. Yeah. And walks away.
And he still says thank you.
Yeah. And the thing is, you see him going, I could have saved this, but I'm too late.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what makes his thing sad, because he realized I could have done something.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm too
late. That's when he starts asking, are these
the
things that will be or might be? Yeah.
He starts to barter, man. He's going back to his sales pitch.
Yeah.
Is this? And I think that's what it adds to it. Because Tim, who was sicker than him, worse off than him, but had supportive family, had a better life, even in that illness, compared to what he had.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what makes it, because that's why when Scrooge says to the ghost of future, I asked you to show me compassion connected to a death.
Right.
Yeah.
And you've done that.
But
I don't need to see no more.
And that's
they
why
home and they take him to the grave.
That's why Ghost of Christmas Present really needs to be almost dismissive of Scrooge, as Scrooge is of everyone else, because Christmas is so much bigger than just this guy who's a little bitch, basically.
Yeah.
He's just shrunk himself into this sort of shriveled position, and he's slowly being drawn out of it, but it's painful.
It's not.
It's the real Scrooge.
He's being. I mean, it's happening all in one night. It's sort of transforming him all in one night. So he has to look at everything.
Right.
He has to be shown all these things without, any kind of, pause or, there's no time left.
Yeah.
There's no time left for that, because you're led to believe that he doesn't have much time left.
Right. And that's, and it's amazing, because then all of a sudden there's that sense of urgency.
Yeah.
When he's after the Cratchits and he's at his own and he's pleading. Yeah. He's urgent about it. He's not, it's like, I can fix this,
Yeah.
And that's what I think, which is the key component of Scrooge or of A Christmas Carol, is it's not too late for redemption.
Yeah.
When I wrote a version of this play and I got stuck at that point because I wasn't too sure how to present it, there was an actress who was had had her master's degree in Old English literature, and she just took my hand and said, "It's not too late for redemption." That's the theme. Remember that. You know,
it's like he's writing a 12-step program, you know,
right,
100 years before it ever was codified under, you know,
exactly. And I think that's what makes it endearing. As a performer, we joked on a couple of times because I wrote a Christmas show with like a few other guys, and we were asked by the publishers, because we got the place published. They turned around and said, what's your worst Christmas show to do? And we all said A Christmas Carol, because we've done it a lot. And they said, what's your favorite show to do? And we all went, A Christmas Carol, because we're still discovering.
Right.
You know, you discover so much in this story.
Yeah, I mean,
especially about yourself, because all of a sudden you're going, "Oh wow, I didn't. I'm right on that verge there."
That's 160 years we've been wrestling with this thing, and it hasn't stopped yet.
Yeah,
it's timeless.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually become quite timeless, and I think part of what,
despite so many people trying to kill it, though. Did you see that one last year where
with Guy Pearce?
With Guy Pearce and Bob Cratchit's wife is a voodoo priestess from Haiti or Barbados. That is just, it missed the point as much as that South Park line. It missed the point as much as that Pearl Harbor movie missed the point about Pearl Harbor.
Right.
It was bad.
Yeah.
But then you get so many people go, well, I could tell a better story. And I want to go, really?
Yeah.
I mean, when
Good fucking luck.
When I adapted the play to one time to a one-man format for the guy Cape May Stage.
I remember that one.
I turned around and said, well, that's when I first said, I'm not as good as a writer as Dickens. I just let, Dickens lead me on my way.
Right.
But I remember when it was over, somebody said, oh, you could do this and you could do this. I'm like, no, because that's not the story.
Yeah, that's not the story.
It becomes fan fiction, as it were.
Yeah,
right.
Here's the thing, by the time we get to the morning, and he realizes he hasn't missed it, things start to repair them. He does his best to go about and repair.
Right. It's the first
step. There is a version, and again, I come back to the Patrick Stewart version,
right,
where it looks like he's going to vomit when he first wakes up, or he's having a heart attack or something, because he's just so. But what you realize is that, like when I talked about this, like the ice in his soul is breaking,
right,
and like he's actually going to laugh,
right,
for like the first time in
a long
God knows how many decades, how many.
And
decades.
that
was just that's what makes me. I love that particular version just for that reason.
Just Bill Murray and Scrooge, where he walks out of the elevator and he's like, holy shit, what a break.
What a break.
Yeah. Best distillation of it ever.
Yeah.
And with Patrick Stewart, even, I was fortunate enough, somebody bought me a copy of his Broadway show where he did it just on stage. It's Patrick Stewart reading the book.
Yeah.
But besides performing it.
Right.
But when he did that moment, it sounded like he was belching and like, what the hell?
Yeah.
He starts laughing.
You didn't know, the first time I saw that, I'm like, what the hell's happening to him? And then he just starts laughing and you're like, wow, okay.
And he realizes, even though I was out of practice, that was the best sound I have ever made in my life, Yeah. But I love it. And as a reader or as someone watching it, you should be feeling that way too when he's going to be saved.
Yeah.
Because if anything, it means to the person reading the book, watching the play, whatever, or watching the movie, whichever one they enjoy the most, you realize that too about yourself, I think.
And in the Stewart version, they do some extra things where he goes to church Christmas morning and, he's reading the hymn and he doesn't know the hymn. But then that guy he's standing next to just kind of holds the hymn book over so he can get into the, and people start sharing.
Right.
It's all this extra things. He goes to his nephew's Fred's house, and you realize that he's been closed off for so long, like how shy he's become.
Right.
Like, he doesn't know how to, like, kind of knock on the door. Like, he can't just go and knock on the door because he probably hasn't been anywhere else but the office, the exchange, and his house for decades.
Yeah.
It's like this,
There's always that doubt when you start being vulnerable. Right. There's always that doubt.
Oh my God, will he let me in? Because like in the book, in Patrick Stewart, please, Fred, will you let me in?
Yeah.
And
he's lost so much time.
Yeah.
But what's left with the, with the time that's remaining.
Right.
There's still more
that
he can do.
Exactly.
He's lost the Bell narrative. You get the impression that that's not going to be restarted or something like that because he's an old man now.
Right.
But he's going to be, this redeemed character who, everyone is going to know throughout the city.
What's the line? He became known as keeping Christmas until the end of his days.
Yeah.
I promise to keep Christmas in my heart all my life. And it's when I did one version of the show, because I was glad you mentioned the church scene. Because that never gets touched either. That's what I also liked about with the Ghost of Christmas Present. They walk through the market and talk to the singers, and I did it with it was a one-man show with 3 singers because I said Dickens didn't realize he wrote a musical that at certain points you could break into old Victorian Christmas carols.
Yeah.
But when he was in the church, Scrooge, I had an actor who couldn't sing. Save his life. So that scene went great, and then we went, maybe I'm too late. And the singers came in singing Amazing Grace. And they surrounded him. And I was like, because people are going, where'd you get that idea? I said, I have absolutely no idea. But that's to me, that's the point of the show. This is why it's one of my favorite stories. And believe me, I've made fun of it on stage so many times.
Yeah.
Christ, I had Tiny Tim as a puppet one time. And when they say the old stool and crutch in the corner, the Ghost of Christmas Present says, yes, if these visions don't change, they're going to carve Tiny Tim into a crutch and a stool. Just to, for a joke point. But it's what makes it that good.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it work. Bill, when you were talking about with Albert Finney, one of my favorite lines that he says when he comes out of the future, and they never bring, he goes, perhaps it was all a dream. And then he stops and said, perhaps it wasn't. But I'm alive, and I have the time, and I love that. And that's really, that moment right there is the pure transformation.
Yeah.
And it's ironic. The first person he talks to is a boy.
Right.
Who he's chased off and, a
smart, wonderful boy.
Smart boy, wonderful boy.
Who's the, now, I guess we can wrap this up with a final question.
Okay.
Is it just a dream?
It could be. It doesn't matter if it was just a dream or not. It could spirits could have been real. It could have been all in his head. It could have been a bit of undigested
beef. Just a potato, yeah.
There's more. It could have been, yeah.
More gravy than grave.
But that doesn't
a lot of
matter.
mustard.
Yeah,
it's very true.
But it's what changed him.
Yeah.
Did it come to him? Did it come, by realizing you're not this guy? I mean, however you interpret it.
Yeah, you don't have to be that guy.
It's still the same ending is I can be redeemed or I can change.
Yeah.
I can,
Anybody who's ever taken a wrong turn in life can relate to this.
Right.
That's the magic of it. And he's, Dickens made it so that it's universally applicable.
Right.
And again, I mean, we're in our 50s, and I started watching this probably before I was 10.
Sure.
And every year I continue to watch it. And now, here I am in my 50s still discussing it and finding new things.
Yep.
There's a universality to it.
Yeah, the thing is, you have to know the original piece in order to fully appreciate all the jokey ones, all the variations. Like I said at the beginning of this, or maybe before we started, I am longing for a big budget, well done, respectful version of this to be done. And I know everyone's done it. Jim Carrey did one, and Patrick Stewart. But I need a big budget, just magnificent.
Directed by Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that would be something, and I don't know, that there's a market. I suppose there is a market for it. I don't know. Maybe we'll get it one day.
I think it depends on what's happening during the years.
Yeah.
I mean, there's times when things are okay. We make the joke versions of it. When things start getting stressful or things start getting, I don't want to say real because that's cliche, but a little more difficult per se.
Yeah.
Suddenly we're looking for shows like that. We're looking for It's a Wonderful Life. We're looking for, the things that say you are not alone, as it were.
Yeah.
I mean, in 1843, when the first copy came out, and I love this fact I wrote the Dickens Institute to ask permission to adapt the book, and they sent me. This was back in the days before email. They sent me a letter, and they were talking about in 1843 when the book came out, 12% of London celebrated Christmas. On December 25th, London was open. They still did businesses, and 5 years later, in 1848, it went from 12% to 92%. And businesses closed down, and it had nothing to do with the fact it was a Christian holiday.
Wow.
People said, I don't want to be a Scrooge.
That's
him being open on Christmas Day.
I did not know that. I knew the Victorians were they were a little hesitant to celebrate. It had gone they'd gone through sort of a puritanical era where it was wrong to celebrate it. But wow, I did not know that change was that.
The city of London, because they said it was such a massive change that eventually they said, okay, we'll just close for Christmas. I mean, that's what it made, because if you look at it, there really is, with the exception of going to the church, nothing really spiritual. It's more mystical. With the ghost coming and talking to him, or is it a dream? Or, they mentioned church and everything else to keep it in, but
the bio I read said that Dickens was heavily spiritual and believed in God, but was very suspicious of organized religion, especially evangelicals. And
him and I share the same thing.
Religion at all, so it makes sense that this would be a deeply Christian story told without it smacking you in the head,
right?
Which are the best ones. I hate that,
and that's what make them relatable. That's what makes the universal
religious aspect of a lot of movies. Now, you're trying to get that audience. It has to be overdone and performative. This is deeply religious, deeply spiritual, and it's not telegraphing that,
Right.
So, I mean, I think this is as good a place. Probably we're coming up close to an hour 15. This is probably as good a place as any to start to wrap it up. Okay. This movie is available on Hulu and Tubi. Tubi is free. Hulu is not. I actually own a copy on DVD. I mean, you can always buy a cheap copy. These things are, probably $5 on Amazon.
Yep.
That's right.
But I'm glad that we were able to cover an actual Christmas movie instead of doing a horror Christmas movie. This was, I think, a far better conversation.
The Martians.
And we're not doing that. We're not fucking doing that. But this is worthwhile. And so, I started out the episode saying, we've made a lot of alterations and changes to this week, and some things got dropped and some things got kicked, so on and so forth. But we always we've landed in the right place with this. So I'm thankful to you guys, Chris Kringle, here to mingle, and Tiny Bill, and everybody, Dan and Eric and Diego and Mario and Nazir and everybody else who came out in the live stream, even the knuckleheads who decided to spam with nonsense because they're idiots. Thank you. I'm even grateful for you guys. So I appreciate that you took the time to show up for a couple of minutes, and
are there no workhouses for them?
Yeah, exactly. Are there no prisons?
Are there no homework?
Kevin Boyer is here, and he says goodbye. Thanks, Kevin, for stopping by, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate everybody who stopped in. It's all good. It's all good, brother. All right, so that brings it to a close for tonight. Tomorrow, the final show of 2021. Eric, Marty, and possibly Ryan, if he's not dead from whatever it is that was bothering him on Sunday, are going to be here to talk Total Recall, which is an odd movie to close out the Christmas season with, but not at all an odd movie to close out this podcast with, because Total Recall is probably right up our alley and our alleys, and I haven't seen it probably in 15 years, so I'm going to have to catch that either tonight or tomorrow.
Sharon Stone in a leotard, my friend.
That is Sharon Stone at the height of her powers, man. I mean, that is just not to be sneezed at. And we were talking about that in Wolf. If she had subbed the Michelle Pfeiffer role because she was possibly in the casting, and that would have been a completely different werewolf movie with Sharon Stone. I mean, she would definitely be sinking her teeth into that, so to speak. All right. That's it for tonight. Thanks to everybody for stopping in. We'll be back tomorrow with the final show. And peace out, everyone. Don't waste your time with bullshit. Good night.
Ho, ho, ho.
Uh-oh.